this instance, I was working with that lender, so, you know, we made them aware of it. And that lender, I'm glad you brought this up, because that lender waived any kind of fees if they have to redo.
How about the rate lock?
That, they waived it. It's locked. So they're not going to have to pay. Also, my clients paid the rush fee.
Oh, God.
$2,000 they paid in the rush fee, which I'm hearing, I don't have confirmation on it, but I'm hearing, maybe some of the other speakers, the escrow speaking, maybe they know, but I'm hearing that the BIA is going to waive rush fees since, in essence, there's no rush. But I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, the loan, again, this is why it's so important to work with, you know, a loan officer and a loan company that's, you know, willing to work with you and understand the situation and be flexible. And so they waived any kind of fees and it's locked in. And so that has given them a tremendous sense of relief because they're spending a lot of money per day to live in that house. It's double what their mortgage would be.
So Guy, let's move right into the lender part. Sandy Edelstein, if you could come up from Homebridge. Thank you, Guy. Don't go home because we got some more questions. Thanks, Steve. So Sandy's with Homebridge. We've known each other, what, about 3 months? All right, if you could, well, this is my mic.
No, I'm done.
Good morning, and good morning. Thanks for having me here today. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a fun time.
Oh yeah, I love to lead off. Yes.
The only thing I can say is that in situations like this one, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You have no control over it. No matter how much you stamp your feet or yell and scream, it's not going to have an effect. You just got to kind of take a deep breath and work through it and deal with it the best you can. I personally, at the moment, have about 9 or 10 leased land loans that we're processing at various stages. There were a couple that, according to the escrow officer, were literally supposed to be signed off and get our approval that Monday, after the government shutdown. So it's been very difficult for the buyers. It's difficult for sellers. You have situations where buyers have sold their current home, they've closed, they have to move out and move in, and now they're literally homeless. They have to get out of their current home because they sold it, and now they're either at a hotel or with a friend or a short-term rental or something. You have sellers that are selling a home on leased land and have bought another home and need to close on the leased land home to use those proceeds to close on the new one. They can't. And who knows what the situation is with the people they're buying the house from. So it's a tremendous domino effect and really, impacting many people far beyond just the individual transaction. For the loans, all we can do is when the rate lock is expired, we have to extend the rate lock. There are ways to, there are sometimes where you can't avoid a rate lock extension fee, and there are sometimes when you can. I don't know what the individual situation was on your loan, but it just really depends. Each loan is an individual situation, depends on timing, depends on the type of product, depends on how long you have to extend the rate lock for, depends on where rates are at the time. If rates are lower, you can often extend without a fee. If rates are higher, you generally can't. So it just sort of depends on a number of factors. Of course, the buyers are very unhappy having to pay a rate lock extension fee. They feel it's not their fault. Why should they pay? I don't disagree. It's not our fault. They want to know who can they talk to, who can they complain to. I tell them the address is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington. Write a letter, maybe enclose a self-addressed return envelope with a stamp on it so they'll get the check back. But I don't know how many of them have taken my advice.
So how much would be one of those fees, a rate lock?
I can't really give you because it depends on the amount of the loan, it depends on the type of the loan, it depends on how long.
I mean, is it $100 or could it be $1,500?
It could be, yes, it could be $100, it could be $1,500. If it's a $1 million loan that you have to extend for 30 days, it could be $5,000. It just depends. So it really varies.
And how much money is the person getting the loan, the buyer, theoretically, how much have they already spent on this? So this goes up in smoke.
Until escrow closes, the only thing, from the loan standpoint, the only thing a buyer is out is the appraisal fee. That's it. The loan doesn't close, they haven't paid anything.
And so you get nothing if you're just like in the same boat we are. You don't get paid.
Correct.
And you do all this work.
Correct.
And the escrow doesn't get paid.
Correct.
And the title company doesn't get paid.
Correct.
The only person that gets paid is Joe Frazier.
That's right.
He doesn't get paid either.
So the other part of this is loan documents. Loan documents have a shelf life, as my colleagues out here, in the lending world will, about generally speaking, loan documents are good until the 10th of the month following the month they're drawn in. So loan documents that were drawn and signed in December would expire on January 10th. That has to do with the rules of how soon after, the rule is basically you can't have your first payment on a loan due any less than 20 days after closing. So that's why if you have a first payment date on any loan docs drawn in December would have a February 1st payment date. If you don't close by January 10th, the loan documents expire, you have to redraw now with a March 1st payment date. So several of these that we already had at the BIA and we're ready to go, obviously we're past January 10th, so we've got to redraw all of those loan documents. The buyers have to sign and they have to start over again with the lease land process. If it's like a Phase Canyon deal or a Las Estancias or Mission Hills, they've got to go through those entities first. Yes, right.
I have a question as it relates to ratios. So for example, they qualified for this mortgage based on all of the information that was provided. But in this situation where they're paying a high rate for this per diem, or in any situation where their debt to income ratio is now affected by what they're currently paying in rent or whatever, will they have to re-qualify based on those ratios? Or?
Well, a per diem would have no impact because that's going to end the moment they close. So the only thing that would happen is as this process goes on, and obviously none of us know how long this is going to be, what will start to happen on some of the files we have is that documentation in a loan file has to be generally within 60 days of closing, depending on the loan, on the investor, and everything like that. So if all of a sudden we have the most recent bank statement we have from a borrower was November, and we thought we were going to close in January, now we're going to close till February, well now they're going to have to provide updated bank statements. Might have to provide updated paycheck stubs. Once we go past January 31st, we have to have 2018 W-2s in the file. That's a requirement. So now people are going to have to start providing additional documentation when they've already signed their loan documents and thought we were ready to, and they're done. So I'm really looking forward to making those calls. I'm just so excited about it. Can't wait.
Okay, let's move on to the escrow. You'll just hang out here because I'm going to have some questions for you guys. Introduce Christy Cornell from Liberty Escrow. We've worked with Liberty. Melvina actually did our escrow in 1997. And Melvina's the one that keeps you out of jail. Amy will do whatever you ask, but Christy is the expert. So if you could tell us kind of what's going on, tell us what you told me earlier, that there might be some things happening. So.
Good morning. I don't know about being the expert, but yeah, we're processing. The residential side opened up last Friday, so they are processing our files right now, trying to get them ready for the ACBCI government side approval. Again, none of us know when that's going to open up, but the good news is that they are processing. There is no rush fees. They are, at least in our case, they returned some of our rush fees. But of course we're doing redraws, and so we've lost our position in the approval line. We're going down to the bottom and we have to take anything back out of there because of the redraw. And they're not accepting any rushes at all, and it's not possible for them to do that because you can't prioritize at this moment with the backlog. So I don't know much more to say about it other than the fact that they are working on trying to get all our corrections and anything that we've got to do ready for that final approval. And hopefully it won't take too much longer.
So when you say, let's just kind of go through this little step here, because a lot of us don't have any clue how this works. We turn it over to the escrow company, and then one escrow will say it'll take you 4 days, another one will say it'll take you 2 weeks. I figured out how the 4-day works and how the 2 weeks works. But when they go to the tribe, right? When you say transactional side.
Well, they're going to the residential side, which is the local side.
Which is Connie Medina and that group, right?
Connie's on the ACBCI. It's Cynthia. It's Cynthia Morales and her team, and that's just a group of people over there that are working on. They're looking at our county records, their recorded records, because they have their own recording section, and they're looking at the chain to make sure there's a proper chain of title going down, that we don't have any unapproved trust deeds or any unapproved, quitclaim deeds. You can't do quitclaim deeds on lease land. You have to have your trust deeds approved. I had an instance about 7 months ago where a lender out of the area put a trust deed against the property, didn't go through the proper channels, and it cost the customer $20,000 in fines. So it's huge to try and keep your escrows local, your lenders local, because our local lenders know what we have to do.
Yes.
The outside ones don't know, and they'll argue with you, and a lot of times they'll get down a 60-day escrow, and they'll get to a point, oh, we can't do it, it's on lease land. Well, you told them that from the beginning. So push for your local lenders. It's really, really important because they do know what's going on. And it makes our jobs easier, for sure.
So they're going through the title verification reports. They're doing all that work that can really drag one of these out. So that's all in process. So what do you think? I know you can't predict this, but what do you think is going to happen once the government reopens? It'll eventually reopen. I mean, in 2020,
Hope.
it'll reopen.
Sooner.
I'm just trying to get applause. So what'll happen when it reopens? I mean, are they going to be able to move quickly on these, or because if a lot of the work is done, they've already found the mistakes and all that?
The residential side is working on getting us all in order and making our corrections, like I said though, but if we've had to pull it out for a redraw, we go at the bottom of the pile. So what I had ready to close, we had submitted on a rush 2 days before the shutdown. They hadn't gotten to it yet, and we lost it. So they're just going to get it ready. I don't know the ratio and how quickly the government side is going to approve it. I imagine they're going to be, all on board, hopefully, working on them, because we're going to be losing loans again if they don't.
Right.
Depending on the timing.
Right. Okay, I'm going to bring, if you could just stay up here, I'm going to bring up Dwayne Carrier, who is the manager for Tarbell Realtors. And then he's going to talk a few minutes, and we're going to ask questions. And we've got till about 10 minutes, till about 15 minutes left here. So we'll ask questions if you don't mind. So Dwayne, if you could tell us, first of all, why don't you come over here so everybody can see it. Well, you're a handsome young man.
I'm not so young anymore.
So tell us how this is affecting Tarbell. How many agents do you have there? How many of them are actually have Indian things going? And then if you could talk about Guy's issue with the whatever that's called.
Interim occupancy.
Yeah, occupancy thing, as opposed to a buyer in possession. And would you, if you had a listing, would you agree to that or not? Or if you could just kind of...
Sure. So our team, we're about 40 realtors in our office in Palm Springs now. Obviously we have the inventory that is on leased land. We have escrows that are on leased land. I think the thing that we're trying, and we had this in our meeting yesterday, this discussion, it's imperative that all of it, we're all colleagues, no matter what agency we are working with, and it's important to communicate to all of the parties the importance of what's happening. We can't, it's beyond our control. So the biggest issue is communication, and I think Guy touched on that. He's communicated with all parties, and the placing of blame currently isn't going to solve anything. So it's very important that we all communicate. The sellers are in distress, the buyers are in distress, the agents are in distress because we're not getting paid and we're having to deal with the phone calls, right? So I think it's really important that we just set the expectation for the people who are currently in escrow. I think that's our #1 urgent issue, is to deal with the people who are currently in escrow and keep everybody in the deal. Because the alternative is the cancellation, and then we have issues regarding that. The people who aren't in escrow, we have the listings currently that are active. And so our discussion yesterday was to pre-sell the situation to all parties. The government is shut down, this piece of it. There's nothing we can do about it. Explaining how it's going to impact them if they're getting loans. Explain how it's going to impact them if they're having a property to sell. That communication is going to be imperative. If you're the listing agent, you communicate with the buyer's agent. Now, everybody in this room, we're all A+. But the fact of the matter is, we have agents from Orange County. We have agents from Long Beach. We have agents coming from all over selling here, and they don't quite understand what we have to face on a daily basis. So educating our colleagues, and, it's easy to say, well, you should know that. Unfortunately, that doesn't represent our clients, and that's what we need to remember. Our fiduciary responsibility is to our clients, and that means communicating and educating people who might not otherwise know what they're doing. So I think that's the most important thing that we discussed yesterday, is just pre-selling the scenarios, Because we don't know, now this is the longest government shutdown in history, we don't know when it's going to end. All parties have dug themselves in, so we just have to explain the situation as it exists.
So let's talk about if the buyer calls your agent and says, I'm done, I want to cancel. They've removed all contingencies, they have no recourse, they have a $15,000 deposit up, and the seller's going to say, fine, cancel, I don't care, I'm keeping the $15,000. And what would you say to that?
So the first step would be you demand to close escrow. And this is a delicate situation. However, the seller is unable to perform at this point. And that's what we need to remember. Who's responsible for the inability to close? At the end of the day, even though it's not the seller's fault, the seller is unable to perform, right? So the first step would be demand to close escrow. And they have the period, 72 hours to cure. And then in the event they're unable to close escrow, the deposit would be refundable to the buyer upon cancellation. You would send a cancellation due to the seller's lack of ability to perform, and the earnest money cannot be seized.
Okay, so we have any questions for our panel? I'm going to take the microphone around so that everybody can hear you, because I know I can't even hear Donna when she's right in front of me.
Not that soft-spoken. Wouldn't you agree a good way to avoid that is to maybe early on try to get them all to sign an extension of time to close?
Immediately.
So if they know that, hey, you know about this, you agree to an extended closing date, they can't then change their mind.
Correct. Communication is imperative.
Yeah, so get them to put it in writing now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, who else has nobody has a question here?
Well, I have another one.
Okay, all right, then we'll go to Eric.
No, I think you said it very well.
Okay.
I have one in Desert Princess, for instance, and my seller's very nervous about giving early occupancy on a lease back because she's worried about all the myriad of permits and lease agreements that the HOA and the city wants for short-term rentals. Now, we can say that's not relevant, but are we sure something like this won't come into play for them, and especially if there's a minimum rental period, or because their buyer needs to get out of their home, you know, like you were talking about, the domino. My seller doesn't want to do it, but we have to do it to keep the deal together, so I need to alleviate her concerns about rental restrictions. Do you have any?
There are
thoughts on this?
protections that you can put in place. Because we all work in different agencies, you need to speak. Oh, I'm sorry. Because we all work in different agencies, policies are going to be different. So you're going to want to make sure that you talk to your broker about the way forward for this kind of situation. Our policy, my policy, is no. You'll arrange some kind of off-site housing situation if possible, because the liability is so great. He went the extra step to really make sure that home warranty is covered. I'm sure insurance was discussed, because that's the biggest liability. What happens during this period if lightning strikes that property? Who's going to be the responsible party? Okay, and that's really where we come into the issue. The risk, the upside risk is tremendous. So you have to, who's State Farm's here today, go to your State Farm agent and say, hey, what do we do? Okay, my team, what I preach is the answer is always yes. You just got to find how to get there, right? It's yes, but. So, because of the risk, I'm going to encourage my team to find alternative solutions, not having them occupy the property. As a last resort, we can do it, but we would try to seek out another alternative first. Because we don't, here's the issue. We can't guarantee it's going to close. Then what? And that's really what frightens us, is it's the what happens if it doesn't close. Then we've got to do an eviction. It becomes a real mess. So those are the reasons that we don't try to do that. But if this is the only solution, then everything's got to be documented. If it's going to be a long term, then we need a lease. If it's more than 30 days. There's just we have to really focus it, and your managers, your brokers are going to be the ones to help guide you there.
So Guy, well, I've got a question here. Everybody with 3 names gets the first shot. If you could just say real quick why you used the IOD instead of IOA instead of buyer in possession. Can you explain? Those are 2 different documents. Can you explain? And are they paying this now into escrow? Are they paying the? I mean, are they writing a check every day or every week?
I'm going to let Dwayne answer about the buyer that form.
Okay.
Because I use the IOA. Inter-occupancy addendum, right? Agreement. Okay. All right. The way that we structured it, and you were right, insurance also, seller demanded proof of homeowners insurance, that was also involved in it. That agreement, it's like I said before, it's really structured for on a monthly basis. So we had to reword it in there that it's going to be so much X dollars a day. And we also had to agree, all the parties had to agree that the seller would be reimbursed that amount, whatever it comes to, because we don't know what that amount will be. But it is racking up daily at close of escrow. So the buyer is going to have to write a check at close of escrow for that amount, whatever it comes to.
Guy, did you hammer that out in the office with your broker? Did you hammer the deal out in the office with your broker, or did you get your attorney involved?
Neither. Neither, I did it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did it also, give credit, with the listing agent. I mean, it went back and forth, and I would send over a first draft, and I'd say, please take a look at this, tell me if, and then she'd send it back to me saying, well, the seller wants this, and we need to. So we did it together. She and I went back and forth to get it hammered out, and it did take pretty much that, right up to that week, up to that last 11th hour between the home warranty companies, escrow, the loan officer, everybody to get it done.
Okay, we'll move on to, I got a question here and then we'll go back.
Actually, it's not a question, it's a statement. Also be aware that there are some leases that are not Indian land.
Correct.
So you're cool with that too. So
La
don't
Palm
get-
is a corporate lease, it's
Right.
not subject to BIA.
Yeah, and that insurance company and, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, and then I'll go over here.
Joe is in the back.
I don't need a microphone. Do you think that the rush fees will be refunded? If not, can Raul Ruiz step in and demand, because most of the country does not have Indian land like we do?
Well, if it's the case where they are going to waive those fees, they haven't been paid yet, so I guess it just,
But waive them is different than being refunded if they've
They're not.
already paid.
Some of them are ours was refunded because we had to do a redraw. They're not accepting rush fees at all, and they won't until this is done and over with, and their backlog is approved, is what I understand. And that's only fair, because how can you put ahead of all these people sitting here waiting already? So,
Okay, we have a question.
Joe Phelan, HomeSmart. Does vacation rental come into this and paying TOT tax?
No.
It's under 28 days?
No, this would not be a short-term rental, right? This is totally different.
Correct.
Because it would be less than 20, it's a good question, actually. It would be less than 28 days.
Hopefully.
But the mayor's here, he's going to waive the TOT tax for anybody in this position, so.
So, if I could say just, Jim, if I could say one thing. So, for those, what we need to remember, guys, and they touched on this earlier, is when the government opens one day, this isn't going to immediately clear itself. We will have long escrows on leased land for the duration until those workers get caught up. So, remember when you're writing offers, you're looking at 70 days, 60, 70 days, depending on if there's a loan or not. And so it's going to be really important to talk to the escrow companies so that they understand the flow. This is going to be your #1 team member when you're writing new offers once the government opens. Because we're going to have to, they're going to communicate the backlog. They're going to communicate with them. We're at 6 weeks. Think about it. Nothing's happening right now. And all of these files, on a good day, their files are like this.
Right.
Now we're going to have, we're a month almost. So it's just stacking up. So communicate with your team members. Write intelligent offers and not subjecting your clients to frustration during the escrow process because you wrote too short of an escrow period.
Also remember that interim occupancy agreement is only good for 30 days or less, so if it goes beyond that,
thank you.
you're going to have to do a full lease.
A lease. That's what I said. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do one more question over here. But that's what I was going to talk about, the buyer in possession, and you're right, after 30 days, then what happens? They can't get them out of there.
No.
They're going to go to India, they'll have a temporary judge, and
Correct.
these people can, I mean, I've had these drag on for a year. Of course, I was out of the country at the time.
Just basically, for the new people that maybe don't understand the whole concept, when the escrow is sending it to the tribe, for approval. Are they still processing and forwarding, or are they holding on?
They started processing, they started processing again this past Friday, so they're trying to get them ready to pass to the ACBCI side once they're back open.
So that the responsibility, once it's open, will be in Washington, where everything has been done
Right.
already and approved.
Right, so.
No, that'll be at the BIA.
Yes,
That'll be
well,
our-
it's on the BIA side, they're both in the same building, so it's just across the hall, but the BIA side is not just working right now, it's just the residential side. But I do have a comment, and it's just on as an escrow person. If you're writing on a lease land, try not to make it a 15-day escrow. It's really, really hard for us to try and do that, and then y'all get mad at us.
You're having a good day.
Y'all have a good day.
Dwayne touched on, I know we're running out of time, but
Yeah.
Dwayne touched on something that's also important. What about the listings that we have right now on leased land?
Don't show 'em.
They're not in escrow. They're on the market. What?
Karen said, don't show them.
I mean, what do we do? What do we tell that buyer that walks in at our open house and says, you know, I'm interested in purchasing this? When do we
Long
tell them?
escrow, they need to have a long escrow.
Yeah, a long escrow.
And Guy, that also goes to new listings, that if you go out to take a listing, and you're gonna tell them the truth, this could be months. And then the other agent's gonna say, oh, don't worry about it. Right, that's gonna happen. Hey, I'll thank our panel today for taking the time to get dressed up.
Thank you all for
Hollywood.
being here today.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, back to Renee.
Renee.
All right, yeah, thank you all for being here today. It's a really important subject, and he's right. I'm in a conundrum myself right now. I have two
Conundrum.
potential listings on leased land. Do I take them? And if or do I hold up? I mean, it's kind of an ethical question. I mean, obviously you can inform them, but to me, it's like, it's open-ended. So, all right, we're going to get to Caravan Showcase because we've got just a few minutes left. And so Randy Weimer